Podcast.
It's Build a Big Podcast, the marketing podcast for podcasters. David with you, and this is the audio edition of my weekly newsletter. It is called Big Podcast Insider. If you want to read it, you can do that at newsletter.bigpodcast.com. All of the links that I mentioned, newsletter.bigpodcast.com. That newsletter goes out every Friday morning, New York time. If you want to subscribe to it, where do you go? That's right, newsletter.bigpodcast.com. This episode is brought to you by Riverside.fm, the leading platform to record studio quality remote podcast and video. AI is all the rage right now. You know that. Everything is AI. And what can AI do for you? Well, if you use Riverside.fm, it will take your raw tape and it will look for exciting points that will work well for social media. It'll clip them for you. It basically does all the work. So if you want a good way to promote your episodes in addition to recording them, and I'm talking about remote guests that sound like you're in the same room, you want to check out Riverside.fm. They're going to give you a couple of hours to try it out. You can do that for free. Kick the tires, look under the hood, see how it works for you. Go to Riverside.fm. It's easy to sign up. It takes just a couple minutes. Try it for free. If you like it, let me give you the discount code. This will get you 15% off for life. Riverside.fm is the URL. The discount code, Big Podcast, BIGPODCAST. That's Riverside.fm. The discount code, Big Podcast, BIGPODCAST. On this episode, talking about the anti-social media podcaster. That's me, by the way. That's how I identify. Tips and best practices for Facebook Reels. How to create a magic subscribe link for your podcast. Where to get episode ideas and how to outline episodes. You can ask guests to do that. Yeah, I can. And I'm going to tell you exactly how that works. Also, some classified ads, things that I think you're going to want to be aware about. I'm going to go from thing to thing to thing, an in-between thing, like an old school audio book that you used to have when you were a kid. Remember those? Records, baby. Vinyl records. Maybe you were around when they were cassettes, but when they wanted you to turn a page, what would you hear? This sound. I got that same sound for you here on Big Podcast Insider. So when you hear the sound, what? Turn the page. Here we go. The anti-social media podcaster. There is something that has been especially obvious over the last couple of weeks with the decline of Twitter, or whatever it's called now. X. You calling it X? You calling it Twitter? And also the rise and arguably fall of Threads. Threads usage is down 80%. But, that's what happens when you kick things off with a bang. Regardless, we are done with social media. Obviously, not everybody. For example, there are a few gurus and influencers. Let's put that in quotes. Gurus and influencers, those guys are trying to hang on for dear life because that is where they've built their reach and authority. But more or less, we're done. Go outside, touch grass, baby. Live in the real world. You can have a very successful podcast without touching social media. With that said, it is a good tool if you use it right. Let's talk about how to do that. I think this being done with social media is actually great for podcasters. If you're not taking advantage of the post-pandemic and post-social media urge that people are having to get together with like-minded people, you are missing a huge opportunity. Here's my challenge for you. Do a meetup and do it in the next couple of weeks. Seriously, I want you to go to meetup.com, eventbrite.com, set up a casual get-together related to the topic of your podcast. For example, you podcast about guitars, set up a guitar meetup. Go to the local coffee shop, get together with a few other people who are into guitars or coin collecting or vegetarian cooking, whatever your podcast is about. Hang out. It doesn't have to be about your podcast. Set it up now. Send me a link. You can do it via social media, Threads, Blue Sky, Mastodon, T2, whatever you're doing. Let me know about it. You might be thinking, hey, I don't have a lot of listeners where I am, or I don't know if I've got listeners where I am. Well, how do you think you get listeners? Do things like meetups, man. I'm giving you the blueprint here. I get the irony of this, by the way. You reaching out to me via social media to talk to me about offline things that you were doing. You might be thinking, I'm okay with setting this thing up, and I'm not going to reach out to David to tell him about it on social media. That's silly. Well, for one, you never know. I might show up. Probably not, depending on where you are. But I might. But I have something that is going to help you with your live events. I want to help you do that. I've done 1,500 something live events, maybe more at this time. 1,500 was the last time I counted, talking about music events. I'm talking about multi-day conferences. I'm talking about comedy events. I'm talking about boot camp workshop events, meetups. I've done them all. and I've been doing them for years and years and years and years and years. This is hands down the best way to grow your audience. Even if you've got 10, 15 people there, these people are going to have such a great time talking about guitars or vegetarian cooking or coin collecting, whatever you podcast about. And then you've got the solution for them to continue those discussions, take them away from the event on the ride home with them as they are driving, listening to you on your podcast. You're going to get a lot of people to sign up for your podcast, your newsletter, whatever you got because of this. It's also a great way for you to get in the trenches info, content ideas, things that are going to help you to build a bigger podcast. So get it together. Go to meetup.com, go to eventbrite.com, set something up and do it in the next couple of weeks. Let me know about it, and I'm going to give you some help to make your event a success. More information, all the social media links, newsletter.bigpodcast.com. Tips and best practices for Facebook Reels. Even if you're ready to ditch social media, here's some social media stuff that you can use for your podcast. Meta published this guide for Reels. I've got it linked, newsletter.bigpodcast.com. You're going to find it helpful even if you don't do Reels. Every one of these best practices has a podcasting equivalent. High quality content is what they're looking for. That is the bottom line. Let's talk about what that means. 3 things. 1, easy to consume, easy to spread, and easy to copy. Here's the raw list of what Facebook recommends for Reels. They want you to entertain your audience with relatable and engaging content that grabs attention. They want you to inspire and start a trend that others can easily participate in. Like the Ice Bucket Challenge. You see what they're doing here, right? They're looking for something to go viral. People always ask, how do I go viral? Yeah, start a trend, man. It can't just be you. You've got to get other people doing what you are doing. What else is on the list? Use creative tools like text, filters, and camera effects. That's kind of cool, but think about this with movies. Do you want all the special effects, or do you want a good storyline? When you've got a good storyline, we've got something that's interesting, something that's fun, something that's engaging, you don't need all the smoke and mirrors. Somebody once told me this about Michael Jackson, and I thought this was great. They said, Michael Jackson, if you put that guy in a room, no smoke, no mirrors, no instruments, no PA, no microphone, imagine hanging out with a guy. He's dancing. Doom, 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 doom. He starts moving. You've seen him do this, right? Hanging out with Oprah. And she's like, Michael, tell me about this. He's like, It's compelling. You don't need smoke and mirrors when you got compelling content. You can do that with your podcast. You can do that with Facebook Reels. And that's their point. That's why they lead with entertain your audience with a relatable and engaging content that grabs attention. Special effects, yeah, it's all right. Further down the list, though. Use music from the Facebook music library or original audio you create. A couple of episodes ago, I had the Barbie edition of the Podcast Insider. Music throughout, it changes things, man. It changes things. Should I put some music on now? Maybe I should. Be experimental or new and try different approaches to see what works for you. Clearly showcase your content using good lighting and shooting techniques. The podcast equivalent, have a good mic. Do it from a quiet place. Don't have kids screaming in the background, jackhammers outside. Respect your audience. Your message is too important for you to deliver it from a car while you are driving. You don't see TEDx done from a car. Martin Luther King Jr., he didn't deliver those speeches from a car. Come on now. Why are we doing that and expecting people to work with us and expecting people to pay attention and expecting people to buy from us? No, man. Don't do that. Everybody's like, keep it real, man. There's some content. I just had this brain fart. I got to get it out. No, you don't. No. Outline it, prepare it, get a good mic, record it from a good place. Your message deserves better. Your audience deserves better. As far as what not to do, obviously, don't do it from a car. Visually recycled from other apps, something that contains watermarks. This is something I see a lot of podcasters doing. They're saying it's content. We got to repurpose the content. We got to put it on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, podcast. Just take that transcript and read it on your podcast. No, don't do that. Now, ironically, this episode, Big Podcast Insider, this is my written newsletter. It's at newsletter.bigpodcast.com. I've already said that URL probably a dozen times on this episode. That is a different thing when you go to newsletter.bigpodcast.com. It is organized. There are links. It is not me offering this additional commentary. I'm not just reading the newsletter that you see at newsletter.bigpodcast.com on this episode. You can do that. That works. I'm not saying not to use the same ideas, because if you do it right, presenting an idea via audio, via video, via a meme, via a diagram, via Blue Sky, Threads, T2, Mastodon, you can give a different perspective to the same idea. And that's in service of your audience, because some people are going to relate to audio better, a written message better, but don't use the same content. I've been seeing these guys do these threads, and they'll just screenshot them. They'll take something from Threads, screenshot it, put it on Instagram, put it on LinkedIn. It's the same thing. I saw one dude, it was a LinkedIn thread. It's on LinkedIn, where all the business people are. And it's something like 10 tips to be more excellent. And it mentions where the original content came from in a non-ironic kind of way. It was a complete mistake. It wasn't like, hey, you're on LinkedIn, let's call this LinkedIn. It was like, hey, this is repurposed. It's almost like, they used to do this with CDs when CDs first came out. Re-record a vinyl record, re-record a cassette on a CD. All right, here you go. It's a CD now. Shovelware, they call it. Don't do shovelware. Don't put a different package on it and call it something else, because it's not something else. It's the same thing. If you're going to do different formats of content, make that content specifically for the format that you're delivering it in. Here's the big idea. Good to Facebook means something that's obviously going to keep people watching and can be easily replicated. Those two things, keeping people listening in the case of your podcast and being easily replicated, something that people are going to share with other people, those are huge benefits. Like I said, everything in this article, it's got a podcasting equivalent. I want you to see it, and you can do that. Newsletter.bigpodcast.com. Create a magic subscribe link for your podcast. On the end of every episode, I tell people to go to bigpodcast.com/subscribe. That's my subscription page. I've made it easy. And what do I say? One click is all it takes. If you're on iPhone, one click, Android, one click. I've got an RSS feed, one click. I've got a QR code that you can scan. Don't click anything. Just scan it. The podcast gets sucked down from the Big Podcast supercomputer into your iPhone, into your Android device. You will never miss an episode. That is a subscribe link. And if you're thinking, man, I'd like to have one of those subscribe links for myself, I've got an easy way for you to do it. It's very helpful when it comes to getting people to subscribe, also known as follow, by the way. That's what the kids are calling it. It's called Pod Follow. It is a free tool. It's going to get listeners in the right place. For example, if somebody clicks on this link via an iPhone, that person is automatically forwarded to Apple Podcasts. You don't have to ask them, are you on an iPhone? It already knows. It knows the person is on an Android device. Here's an example of how it works. It's podfollow.com/bigpodcast. It's a free service. It is easy to sign up. You can set it up for your podcast in just a couple minutes. And where is that linked? Yeah, you know it. Newsletter.bigpodcast.com. Where to get episode ideas and how to outline episodes. Some easy ways for you to get episode ideas for your podcast. The most popular YouTube videos of your favorite channels. If you're on YouTube looking at something within your niche, what are the most popular videos there? Yeah, that's content for you. Make your own version of that. Medium article headlines. You know Medium, medium.com? A great resource for finding episode ideas. Previous content that you've done, it's done well. You want to refresh it. You can do that. Things are always changing in the podcasting space in any kind of specific niche. Social media, that's what this episode is about. It is always changing. Threads didn't exist a couple months ago. Now it does. Something that's on your mind and that you just want to write about. That's okay. As long as it's related to your niche, that can be a very good thing. It's going to get your listeners connected to you. Here's a 4-part framework for you to outline episodes. APAG, APAG. A equals attention. That's agitating and painting a picture of the problem. P is perspective, describing in perspective on the topic that you see is wrong and why. A is advantage, the benefits behind seeing this problem from this perspective. And G, gamify, steps to overcome the problem and a challenge. Let's go through this. A, attention. What's a problem podcasters have? Your podcast is not getting very many listeners. Well, why is that? It may be because you don't have a good microphone. But is it your microphone or is it how you're using your microphone? That's the perspective. Maybe you don't necessarily need a $500 microphone. You can do this with a $60 microphone. And you've got a $60 microphone. You just don't know how to use it. You got a Blue Yeti. The settings are wrong. That's a different perspective. The next thing, advantage, the benefits from seeing it from my perspective, that is, you've already got the equipment laying around your house. You don't need to go spend more money. You don't need to buy stuff, wait longer. You can do this tonight. Just flip the switch on the back. I'm going to get you sounding great. And G, she's calling it gamify, steps to overcome the problem and the challenge. Go to your Blue Yeti mic, flip it on the back, turn the gain level all the way down, and you're going to see another knob with 4 symbols on it. The symbol that you want looks like a little bitty heart, maybe a butt. Pick that one. Flip it back around, get about 2 inches from that mic, plug it in, talk into it. You're going to sound a whole lot better. Easy, easy. Where do you get your ideas for your podcast episodes? I want to know. Hit me up. Threads, Blue Sky, Mastodon, T2, wherever you are, almost. I'm not going to say where I'm not. You can find out both, newsletter.bigpodcast.com. You can't ask guests to do that. I do a lot of podcast interviews as a host. I've done hundreds. Maybe, I don't think I've done 1,000, but I've done several hundred interviews. I recently had a conversation with another podcaster about doing interviews and my guest rules. I've got rules for guests. He said, you can't ask guests to do that, but I can. And I do. He was referring to pre-interviews, by the way, one of the most important aspects of getting a good episode. Related. I want to be kind to my guest. If there's a sensitive issue, I'll often check in beforehand to see if it's okay for me to mention it. For example, I interviewed a guy. He had just been picked up on drug charges in a stolen car. And I asked him, I said, are you okay talking about that? And he was, so we did. But in general, as far as rules of engagement, I do have one, and that is I'm going to ask the question and you don't have to answer. I'm not going to be mad if you don't answer. If it's not something that you want to talk about, that's fine. We might not use the interview if you do that too much, because I'm asking you things that the listeners of this show want to hear. But if I ask something and it's sensitive, you're like, it's getting a little too personal. Okay, cool. I'm not trying to embarrass you. I'm not trying to have a gotcha moment. I'm not trying to do anything that's going to make you look bad. I'm just trying to look out for my listeners, and I care more about my listeners than I do the guest. That's not to say that I don't care about the guest, but listeners come first. If the guest wants to get on the train that I'm on with the listener, come on board. We got you. I will look out after you. I will make you sound good. I will edit you. I will pre-interview, do all the research, everything that it takes to make you sound as good as I can. If you don't want to answer a question or two, that's okay. I'm going to work around that. But it cannot be to the point where the listeners are affected. By the way, I got a cool Dolly Parton video. How does she handle it when people ask her questions she doesn't want to answer? Dolly's one of these interesting people. If you go to Pigeon Forge, Tennessee, it's a tourist trap, kind of the Daytona Beach of the mountains. We'll call it Trump country. It is hardcore right. People love Dolly Parton in that area. The hardcore MAGA fans, they love her. You know where else they love Dolly Parton? Gay clubs. You go to Chelsea, Manhattan? Yep. They love Dolly. Everybody loves Dolly. How does she do it? I got a video. It's going to give you some insight into that. Newsletter.bigpodcast.com. Classified ads for you. Swell AI automates writing podcast summaries, articles, social media posts, and more. Here's how it does it. It manages multiple shows in one dashboard. You can build a custom template for each show, which is going to save you a lot of time. It connects directly to Google Drive, Dropbox, Zoom. Everything is uploaded to Swell AI automatically. It spits out all this content, podcast summaries, articles, social media posts. You can get started for free. Swell AI is the tool. I've got it linked. Newsletter.bigpodcast.com. Also, Cave Day. Be more productive with Cave Day, the virtual co-working solution used by creatives at Netflix, Spotify, and Amazon. I told you this last time. How many people have I met who work at Netflix via Cave Day? A lot. It seems like all of them do. If you want to meet some great writers, get in a good community of creative people, you're going to find them at Cave Day. You can try it for $1. I've got a special link for you. It's at newsletter.bigpodcast.com. One more thing for you. When you are ready, here's how I can help you even more. If you like this newsletter, you like the podcast, you're going to love Big Podcast AMP. It stands for Audio Monetization Program. This is a personal coaching program that has been designed to help you do 3 things. Grow your podcast audience, get people talking about your podcast and make more money with your podcast. I've got details at bigpodcast.com/amp, also newsletter.bigpodcast.com. Either way, go to either one. You'll get all the details. Like I said, if you like the newsletter, you like the podcast, and you want to grow your podcast, Big Podcast AMP is for you. Thank you for listening to Build a Big Podcast. If you want to make sure that you never miss an episode, this is how to do it. bigpodcast.com/subscribe. I got the magic subscribe links right there. One click is all it takes. iPhone, Android, or RSS. One click, it's going to get you subscribed. You will never miss an episode. As soon as I upload it, you will have it on your phone, however you get your podcast. I got you covered. bigpodcast.com/subscribe. Go there now before you forget, and I'll see you on the next episode of Build a Big Podcast.